There is a moment you know too well. You are in the room, physically present, face calm, body still, but inwardly, you have already left. The voices keep going, the laughter rises, the stories stretch longer than they need to. Everyone is trying to be seen, trying to matter, trying to control the mood with noise, and your brain does something almost automatic. It runs a cost calculation. How much energy will this require? How much false enthusiasm? How much self-betrayal? How much pretending? And then it decides, the noise is not worth the energy, so you go quiet. They call you quiet. They ask if you're okay. What they don't realize is that you have already finished the conversation in your head before they even started speaking. And that is what unnerves them. Because your silence is not emptiness. It is assessment, pattern recognition, containment. It is not weakness. It is traumatic intelligence. Let us name this clearly. Your silence did not come from nowhere. For many people it was forged in a battlefield childhood. Not always a battlefield of fists. Sometimes a battlefield of moods, tone, tension, unpredictability, emotional weather that could turn in a second. In that kind of environment, the nervous system becomes a survival instrument. The amygdala sharpens. The body learns to notice what others miss. A pause before anger, a shift in breathing, a jaw tightening, a look across the room, the sound of footsteps and what kind of mood they carry. You learn to read signals because signals kept you safe. So when people now ask, why are you so quiet? They are asking the wrong question. The real question is this: what did your system have to learn in order to survive? Because what they call overthinking was once preparation. What they call distance was once protection. What they call quietness was once the difference between safety and exposure. That is why your silence is not simple shyness. It is strategic absence, a calibrated withdrawal, a refusal to waste energy where there is no coherence, a nervous system deciding with extraordinary speed whether this room is worthy of entry. You are not speechless, you are measuring. You are sensing whether the room is honest or theatrical, safe or performative, grounded or hungry. And because your awareness moves beneath the surface, people mistake your restraint for insecurity. But the truth is harsher than that. You often speak less because you perceive more. You hear what words are trying to hide. You feel the friction beneath friendliness. You detect when charm is compensation, when humor is deflection, when confidence is just fear wearing better clothes. That is traumatic intelligence. Not a gift in the sentimental sense, a costly intelligence, an intelligence paid for by exposure, by vigilance, by adapting too early to emotional instability. And once you have developed it, you cannot go back to being casual in shallow rooms. Now we move deeper. Why does your silence make certain people itchy? Why do some become nervous around you, even when you say nothing? Why does your quietness sometimes trigger hostility, suspicion, projection? Carl Jung answered this long ago. Because silence becomes a mirror. And most people do not mind a mirror until it tells the truth. Jung taught that every human being carries a shadow, the parts of the self they denied, the impulses they buried, the hunger they softened, the courage they abandoned, the unlived life they keep avoiding. And when they meet someone who does not perform for approval, someone who can sit in silence without begging for emotional permission, their mask begins to slip. Your silence removes distraction. It takes away the usual social anesthesia, the filler, the banter, the easy reassurance. And once that noise disappears, people are left alone with themselves. That is what scares them, not you, themselves. Your quietness becomes a mirror in which they glimpse their own insecurity, their own dependence on approval, their own need to over-explain, their own inability to sit still without performing a version of themselves. This is why some people suddenly label silent people as cold, arrogant, strange, intense. Those labels are often confessions in disguise, because when a person says, "Your silence makes me uncomfortable," what they often mean is, "I cannot control what your silence reflects back to me." The awakened outsider knows this feeling. You enter a room and say little, and somehow that says too much. Your restraint exposes excess, your calm exposes agitation, your non-performance exposes desperation, and this is why your silence can be hated. Because silence is not neutral when it stands beside chaos. It becomes contrast, and contrast is a form of revelation. So if people fear you, misread you, or feel unsettled by your quietness, do not always interpret that as rejection. Sometimes it is measurement, a measurement of your substance. A ghost does not bump into anything. A ghost offers no resistance, but a mountain. A mountain cannot be moved, and because it cannot be moved, everything unstable around it feels its own instability more clearly. That is why your silence frightens people. Not because it is empty, because it is solid. But this is where the path changes, because not all silence is the same. At first, silence is defensive, hypervigilant, scanning, bracing. It is the silence of a nervous system preparing for impact. But if your inner work is real, if your shadow work is honest, your silence begins to transform. It becomes less about danger and more about sovereignty. This is where Jung's path of individuation matters. Individuation is not self-improvement in the shallow sense. It is the long, painful process of becoming whole, of integrating what was split off, of no longer being ruled by every wound, every projection, every sting. There comes a stage, I call it the Sophia stage, where wisdom becomes quieter than pain. The room is still loud, people are still chaotic, the world is still full of masks. But something in you stops reacting the old way. You no longer feel compelled to fix the room, to rescue the mood, to prove your goodness, to explain your interior. You become a clear, quiet space, not numb, not detached in the dead sense. Clear. Chaos can happen around you without taking possession of your ego. This is what maturity feels like in an awakened mind. The world still stings, but not every sting gets access. Not every tone deserves interpretation. Not every misunderstanding deserves repair. Not every room deserves your nervous system. That is the movement from hypervigilance to sovereignty. You stop asking, "How do I survive this room?" and begin asking, "Does this room deserve my presence?" That is a different life. Because the ultimate power is not in controlling the environment, it is in no longer being internally controlled by it. You become still, and that stillness is not passivity, it is self-possession, a throne inside the psyche, a place within you that noise cannot rule anymore. Now we move from healing to strategy, because once silence is no longer fear, it becomes power. Machiavelli understood what wounded people struggle to accept. The one who keeps explaining is still negotiating, still trying to manage perception, still trying to control how they are held in the minds of others. But the silent strategist learns a colder law: never explain. Not because you are cruel, not because you are hiding, but because unnecessary explanation is often surrender. It hands your nervous system to the room. It gives strangers remote access to your inner weather. And the awakened mind becomes very careful about that. You begin to understand that every time you over-clarify yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you give away the remote control. Every time you defend your silence to noisy people, you let them define the terms. Every time you justify your boundaries to those offended by them, you let chaos negotiate with order. So you stop. You withdraw words, and in doing so, you regain command. This is the Machiavellian edge of silence, not mute weakness, calculated non-participation. You do not answer every accusation. You do not soften every truth. You do not rescue every insecure person from the consequences of meeting your stillness. You remain untouchable, because a person cannot easily control what they cannot provoke. And that is what silence does at its highest level. It protects your center. It protects your timing. It protects your signal from being diluted by noise. The world will tell you to open up more, to be more approachable, to stop being so hard to read. But often, what they are really asking is this: please become easier for me to manage. Do not confuse accessibility with virtue. Some access must be earned. Some silence is sacred. Some clarity belongs to you alone. This is how the awakened outsider stops being consumed by social energy. Not by winning the room, by no longer needing to. There is one final shift you must make. You must stop interpreting their discomfort as proof that something is wrong with you. It may be the opposite. Their fear of your silence may be a compliment, a brutal one, but a compliment nonetheless, because people are not disturbed by what has no substance. A ghost does not scare strong people for long. It passes through everything. It leaves no impact. But a mountain forces a reckoning. It cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be sweet-talked into moving. It does not apologize for being solid. That is what your silence becomes when it is rooted in self-possession. A mountain. And unstable people feel mountains as a threat. Not because the mountain is attacking them, but because it reveals how much of their life depends on movement, performance, and external validation. So if they hate you for your quietness, if they fear you, if they become suspicious because you no longer over-explain yourself, read it carefully. It may be a measurement of your substance. The room does not react this strongly to emptiness. It reacts to density, to gravity, to solidity, and the awakened mind, once integrated, carries all three. So hear this clearly. You are not the problem. You are not broken because you no longer perform comfort for strangers. You are not wrong because your nervous system refuses shallow rooms. You are not arrogant because you stopped explaining yourself to people who only listen to distort. You are the one who stopped running after approval, stopped running after safety through over-explaining, stopped running after belonging at the cost of your own nervous system. That is why your silence changed. It is no longer collapse. It is command. No longer fear, discernment, no longer absence, sovereignty. So the next time someone calls you too quiet, too hard to read, too intense, remember what they may actually be reacting to. Not your emptiness, your solidity, not your weakness, your refusal to be moved, not your disconnection, your return to yourself. If this spoke to you, if you are one of the awakened outsiders, one of the silent strategists who has reclaimed the remote control of their own inner world, drop the word sovereign in the comments. Not for performance, for recognition, a signal that you have claimed your peace.